Hey guys, in the previous video I spoke about the disgrace of Gijón, a match between West Germany and Austria in the 1982 World Cup, and as a result of this match, FIFA had changed some of the rules and they decided that the final group matches in the group stage of the World Cup would be played at the same time. But this hasn't stopped collusion from happening. It may have cut it down a bit, but it didn't completely eliminate it. And we're going to talk about the 1990 World Cup and a game in particular that took place in Group F between the Republic of Ireland, yay, and the Netherlands, boo. So, how did this game turn out and what were the circumstances leading up to it? Well, let's have a look at Group F to see how it panned out. The first game was between England and the Republic of Ireland, and that ended up in a 1-1 draw. And the next game was between the Netherlands and Egypt, and this one also ended up in a 1-1 draw. So, on to the second round of matches, we had England and the Netherlands, and this ended up in a 0-0 draw. So we're starting to see a lot of draws happening. Every game so far has been a draw. So what happened with the next game? It was Ireland and Egypt. And look at this. It was also a 0-0 draw. So we had 2 1-1 draws, 2 0-0 draws. So every team had drawn their matches and they had also scored the same number of goals and conceded the same number of goals. So this was the group standings after the first 2 matches. It was an incredible situation where the 4 teams were completely deadlocked. All 4 teams had 2 points. They had 1 goal for, 1 goal against, goal difference 0. So then it came down to the final group matches. So what was going to happen? Well, before the tournament, Egypt would have been considered the weakest of the 4 sides. The other 3 sides coming from Europe, all stronger teams. Probably the Netherlands and England, the 2 strongest, followed probably by the Republic of Ireland. But Egypt, as we can see, they drew against the Netherlands and the Republic of Ireland. So they were level with the 3 European sides, and it was all to play for. It was like all the games never happened. They were all dead even. So what happened? Well, let's have a look. These 2 games took place at the same time because of what happened in 1982 between West Germany and Austria. Let's see what happened. England beat Egypt 1-0. Wright scored for England after 58 minutes. So this is important. Mark Wright, English defender, he think he was centre back. He scored for England after 58 minutes. So what that would mean is that England would go through and Egypt would be knocked out. But what about the other game? Ireland and the Netherlands. Well, let's see what happened. It ended. Ireland won. The Netherlands won. So what happened in this game was the Netherlands took the lead from Ruud Gullit. So that was after just 11 minutes. So for a long time, the Netherlands it looked like they would top the group. They were beating Ireland, and England were drawing 0-0 with Egypt until Wright scored. So then it was England and the Netherlands both leading. So it was going to look like it was going to be the Netherlands and England going through, and Ireland and Egypt would probably be knocked out. But then Ireland equalized. Niall Quinn scored after 71 minutes, and that made the game 1-1. So what would that mean then? It would mean that Ireland and the Netherlands would both qualify as long as England held on to the 1-0 lead, or even if they scored another one. And as long as England won the game, Ireland and the Netherlands would both qualify, because in the 1990 World Cup, there were 6 groups, and what it meant was that the top 2 teams would qualify, and the 4 best placed third place teams would also qualify. So finishing third, you'd have a 2 in 3 chance of qualifying, which is what happened in Group F. Now Group F, these were the last games played in the group stage. So Ireland and the Netherlands both knew, all the teams knew in this group, that if you ended up on 3 points, that would be enough for you to qualify if you were in the top 3. So because England were beating Egypt 1-0, this 1-1 score for Ireland and the Netherlands would have suited both sides. Both sides would qualify. And that's how the game ended. But after Niall Quinn scored, the 2 captains, Mick McCarthy and Ruud Gullit, had a little bit of a conversation. And then you could see some of the other players having a conversation. And basically that game ended after 71 minutes because the teams more or less stopped playing. And as long as England would win, then that would be it. So here we go. England finished on top on 4 points. Now back then you only got 2 points for a win, which is why England had 4 points and not 5. So they had 1 win and 2 draws, and they had a +1 goal difference. And the Republic of Ireland and the Netherlands finished dead even. They drew the game against each other, and they had a 0-0 draw and a 1-0 draw in the other games. So they finished dead even. They were split by the drawing of lots to determine second and third place. So they drew lots, basically, and that determined the final positions, and Ireland were deemed to finish second, and the Netherlands finished in third. And so, because this game between England and Egypt finished 1-0, these two sides colluded. And it's not as well known as the game between West Germany and Austria in '82, but this definitely happened. I watched this game, and yeah, there was definitely collusion. England held on for the 1-0 victory. Now, what would have happened if Egypt had equalized? Well, that would have been amazing, because then all the teams would have finished with identical records. They would have finished all on 3 points. Their goal difference would have been 0. Goals for and goals against would all have been identical. So in this situation after 2 games, it would have been just, they would have added 1 goal each, all of them, and 1 point each. So it would have all finished dead even. The goal difference would have been 0. And in that case, they would have had to draw lots to determine the positions. It would have been an incredible scenario, because you would have had drawn lots to determine which teams qualified and which were knocked out. Now, if we look at how the third place teams were decided, I'm going to show you a list. Okay, so these are the 6 teams that finished in third place in all the groups. We can see the Netherlands were designated third, and they qualified because they got 3 points. The 4 third place teams that qualified all ended up on 3 points, and the 2 knocked out finished on 2 points. So what would have happened is, if England and Egypt had drawn their game, then 3 teams would still have qualified from the group. So it would have been 3 out of the 4, because they would have ended up on 3 points. But they would have had to draw lots for the 3 teams. So they would have had to pick the team in first, second, third, and the poor suckers who would have been knocked out. So it would have been an incredible situation. As it turned out, we had to draw lots for Ireland and the Netherlands, but it wasn't as important because both of them were guaranteed a spot. It did end up working out better for Ireland to finish second, because what happened in the knockout stage was the Netherlands ended up playing West Germany, and it was actually West Germany that won the tournament. They beat Argentina in the final, whereas Ireland had an easier draw against Romania, and Ireland actually beat Romania in penalties before losing to Italy, the host nation, in the quarterfinals. So it definitely worked out better for Ireland to come second. So what would have happened if Ireland and the Netherlands didn't collude and one of these teams actually went on to win the game? So let's just say if Ireland won this game 2-1, what would have happened? Would the Netherlands have been knocked out? Well, let's see. So if we look at the third place teams, it would have meant that the Netherlands, instead of having 3 points here, they would be down to 2 points, and they would in fact have an identical record to Austria and Scotland. They would be on 2 points with a -1 goal difference, 2 goals for, 3 goals against, and therefore they would have had to draw lots to see which out of the 3 teams would qualify between Austria, Scotland and the Netherlands. And of course, if the Netherlands had beaten Ireland 2-1, it would be Ireland with identical records to Austria and Scotland. Now, it would also mean that Egypt would be knocked out automatically, because Egypt's record would have been 1 goal for and 2 goals against. So they would have scored less goals. So if we look at the final table, Egypt scored 1 and had 2 goals against. They were -1. So Egypt, they would still be out because they would have scored less goals than Austria, Scotland, and whoever lost 2-1 between Ireland and the Netherlands. Now if one of these teams won 3-1, then what would happen is the team that lost would be out, because their goal difference would have been -2 instead of -1. So they would be on 2 points, but their record would be worse than Austria and Scotland. They would have conceded 1 extra goal it would be 2 for and 4 against. So they would have been out. And Austria and Scotland would have to have lots drawn to see which one of those two would have qualified. So it was kind of a dangerous game in one sense, because the England and Egypt game was still happening. And as I pointed out before, if Egypt had equalized, then all 4 teams would have been deadlocked. Completely deadlocked, and it would have been a complete lottery to see who would qualify and who would get knocked out. 3 teams would have qualified, 1 team knocked out. So there you go, guys. The Republic of Ireland and the Netherlands, they colluded in 1990. Both teams ended up going through to the second round. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, because I'll be doing more videos about sports and corruption and collusion. So if you like that kind of thing, subscribe. So until next time, see you guys later.